We're waiting for one more of the panel members, which is Chief Gray of Reading Fire Department. So he must have got tied up. He could join in, are they? Just to have a little issue across town. So he can come in and join us later. I think we got enough ammo here where we can get started. I know there's going to be some questions. I don't know if it'd be easier if everybody kind of moved forward a little bit. If you can hear, fine. But when you ask a question, can you please just sort of raise your voice, because you can't really hear very well when you're in the back to the front. So today we kind of changed the format again. We've done this a couple times. We just want to do an information, sort of an educational discussion, a panel. And so just a couple of housekeeping notes. I always ask, and I don't think there's too many new faces today. How many are new to this meeting? First timers. Okay, so few. We can vary anywhere from 25 to 125 people at this meeting. So I'm not discouraged by the number. I would have liked to have seen a few more people, because there seem to be a lot of people with questions out there. But we were just talking about maybe the time of day is not the right time of day for some people. So I know the chief has a town hall meeting coming up
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday?
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of these questions will get answered at that town hall meeting, which is in the evening. So what we're trying to do is just put together some educational sessions so that people who have questions can get those questions answered. A lot of people in our community make comments just based on some of the things they hear around the community. And I don't think that's the right way to gather information. I've always been a firm believer that you need to go to the source, which we have today. This panel is the group that's going to put things together for us and hopefully answer all of our questions to the best of their ability, and maybe help us pass the sales tax that we need very desperately in our community to solve some problems. So Matt Morgan, I don't believe, is here. We were going to do an update on our anti-panhandling campaign, but he's got some issues he's dealing with in his business. So I think we'll just jump right in and have the panel give you a brief. I know Brent's going to do a brief presentation, and then we'll just move forward from there. Please don't be shy. Ask the questions you need to ask to get the right answer. And then we're going to be having another one of these sessions August 10th. Same time, same place. So tell your friends and the people that you're acquainted with. If you want to have your questions answered, you want to know a little more about what's going on in our community, then show up on August 10th. Okay? Yes? As far as I know, nobody's recording it, so we don't have this information. I don't know what Brent's going to be able to do. Are you going to be able to do it? Okay. Well, I guess Jake's got a handle on it, so if you want to contact the Reading Chamber of Commerce, I'm sure Jake will help you out.
Yeah, it's being recorded on, it's live on our Facebook page right now, but when this is done, if it all works properly, it'll be available as a recorded video on our Facebook page.
And Sean, you're streaming through Periscope right now, and does that stay on the web?
Yes.
Okay, so if you follow the Record Searchlight on Twitter,
Yes.
okay, then you click on Periscope. If you have more questions, Tyler Witham, a resident tech expert. Well, thanks for being here. Wednesday, hot, warm day. My wife and kids have been gone for the last week visiting her family, so I've had a chance to try to catch up on all my work and getting ready for this meeting. And I hope we can, myself and the rest of this panel, we can provide some information on Measure D, Measure E, and more importantly, give you guys a chance to ask questions. And then after this meeting, hopefully you'll feel more informed, and as you're out in the community, you can be talking with your neighbors, your friends, maybe put stuff on social media. I think Measure D is critical for this community, for us to move it forward in such a way where we're proud to be living here, raising our families, investing in business, trying to attract other businesses to our area. So I wanted to take about 7-8 minutes. I want to talk about why Reading is kind of in this predicament along with so many other communities up and down California. So we started having prison realignment take place 3-4 years ago, and the first blow for local communities was AB 109, and that's where they started reducing sentences or basically just cutting short or alleviating certain crimes that were nonviolent so that the governor could reduce the number of inmates they had at state prisons. So where did those people go? They got pushed back to the communities they were sentenced in. So that was the first wave where you started to see the community, getting frustrated, feeling the effects of it. When I was campaigning, that became the central theme of my campaign, and it must have hit an emotional nerve in the community, because as we were doing rallies and talking about it, as we were experiencing the effects of AB 109 for the first time, it seemed like we had great discourse as a community and in our different medias. And then if that wasn't enough, we had approximately a year and a half ago, Prop 47, which again was a way to reduce the number of inmates in state prisons. And again, where did they go? They got pushed back to the communities they were sentenced in. So we have another round of people that may or may not have been rehabilitated coming back into communities that they once were wreaking havoc in. And then you get what I call the last year and a half, 2 years, where based on how much information you have, education, how much you follow local government or the local scene, you start to get where you're fighting over, why has my life gotten worse? Why, if I own a business, am I frustrated, about operating this business, that the way people can affect it, or the way certain people can affect if people feel safe to come to an area like downtown or on Hilltop. And we've had great debate from social services to public safety, law enforcement, how they're interconnected. And I think as a community, depending, I think those of you who are in this room, I put you in the top 10 percentile who are paying attention. I always tell people that most of the people I'm spending my time with on the weekends are soccer moms and soccer dads, and that's when I get a chance to tell my circles what I'm working on. End of last week I was on the McCloud River kayaking with some friends, and one of them is an engineer in town. And what did he want to talk about for an hour and a half around the fire? He wanted to talk about homelessness, transients, crime, drug use, all the things that we've been talking about as a community. So we, hopefully for many of you, you're aware that we completed a study, the blueprint, and then we formed a blueprint implementation team, which is those of us here, along with Chief Gray, City Manager Kirk Starman, and County Executive Officer Larry Lees. And we went through the blueprint recommendations, and then with our technical experts, we said we accept certain recommendations, or we amended, or we even included other things that we thought would give us the greatest return on investment. So, end of March, beginning of April, the City Council debated whether or not we were going to put a transaction and use tax on the November 8th ballot. We debated that as a council, went back and forth, and we ended up passing it 5-0. And so what that transaction and use tax is, we refer to it as Measure D, which is the simple 0.5% increase to our local sales tax. But it's a little bit different than a sales tax. A transaction and use tax means it's not, a sales tax is tied to a geography. Transaction and use would be where the use of that good. So for example, if you buy a car in Sacramento, because you use it in Redding, if Redding's your residence, the taxes actually go back to the community you reside in. So I wanted to give you guys just a brief rundown. So today, City of Redding, we're at 7.5% on our sales tax. That is the lowest local sales tax in all of California. I think there's one or two other communities that are at the same rate as us, but we are at the lowest. The vast majority of communities are in the 8% and some even in the low 9%. At the end of this year, 2016, Proposition 30 will expire, which will see our tax rate go from 7.5 to 7.25 in December. If on November 8th Measure D passes, then that will go into effect April of 2017, which then would see our tax rate go from 7.25 to 7.75. So essentially, from where we are today, If it passes in November, Measure D would increase that to 7.75 from where we are today. Measure E is the advisory measure. So why do we need an advisory measure? Well, 2 years ago, when the council at that time decided to move forward on public safety sales tax, they decided to go for a specific tax. To go for a specific tax, you have to achieve a 2/3 majority plus one. To give you guys an idea, Siskiyou County recently tried to pass a specific tax to increase additional jail space, and that failed, as did ours. You've seen other communities up and down California start to do what we're doing here, or what we're following in Anderson. So Anderson has passed a general use tax with an advisory measure. Red Bluff, and more recently Corning has passed their general use tax with an advisory measure. So we're going that route now. For a general use tax, you have to achieve 50% plus one. So the reason we need this advisory measure is so you as voters can tell us as your electeds how you want that money spent. So in Measure E, it actually will list out 4 areas: social services, sobering center, mental health, fire department, police, and our sheriff. And they'll go into more detail for their departments. And I believe Supervisor Modi is going to talk a little bit on the mental health part today. So in Measure E, we have advisory of what we're recommending of how we would allocate funding. Is it perfect? No. But it's a huge step forward from where we are today, and I think restoring trust, in our community and our citizens. So I'd say the biggest question I've got in the last 2 months from the community, as this debate has continued, goes back to trust. Government has few ways to collect revenue, and it's always come back to the people and ask them for more. I'll just say it one more time. The only thing I will put my name on to increase revenue in the form of the tax would be for public safety. I'm a proud member of my political party, but what trumps all of that is my community and my family. And quite frankly, I just cannot sit by and talk to people and not give them a chance to improve their situation for raising a family here and their businesses, which is why I am all in on Measure D and how we're going to allocate the funding. Back to this question of trust. So people are saying, well, how do we know we can trust you? We've put a few things in place to, I guess, what we call safeguards. So the City Council has established what we're calling a special account. So instead of this, if Measure D passes and this new revenue is coming, instead of it just going directly to our general fund, it will go into a special account. That's more for visual and optics, so that we can clearly see how the money's coming in, and then we can see how we allocate it from that special account. At our last council meeting, we just picked our new independent auditor for the City of Reading for the next several years. They will, as part of their responsibilities for the City of Reading, they will prepare a page specific to this special account to show how the money was allocated. Then we went a step further at our last council meeting, where we are going to form a citizen committee, 5-member committee of citizens out in the community that will look at the independent audit and look at anything else that deals with that special account and give their opinion and recommendation back to the City Council whether or not we are following the spirit and the law or what's been put into Measure E. There's been a lot of discussion around who will be on that citizen committee. So there is, I will tell you, if I was sitting around my kitchen table and I was talking to my kids and they said, all right, well, how are you going to pick this? It's easy if you're on the playground and you got 2 kids come out and they pick 2 basketball teams, you just pick it. It is what it is. When you have 5 diverse people on a council with totally different political backgrounds, different supporters, different interests, you have to work with your peers to make sure you come up with a system. And so we came up with what I think is a fair system. It meets the criteria for many people, for others it might not. So the criteria we came up with is each of the council members will come up with 2 or 3 names to give to Mayor MacArthur, and then she will ultimately take those names and she'll appoint a 5-member committee. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my names that I'm going to submit. And I don't know. I'm going to submit Jake Mingus, who's president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to submit Ryan Denham, who is a car dealership owner in town who has historically been anti-tax, very fiscally conservative. I'm also going to give Mary Machado's name. I think Mary Machado's been very outspoken about fiscal scrutiny, fiscal discipline, and Michael DeQuisto, somebody who's a bankruptcy trustee lawyer. And so, do I know if Mayor MacArthur's going to take any of my names? I don't, but I'll lobby hard, try to get one or two of my names on there. But those are the type of people I'm going to be presenting forward to make sure that we're getting opinions back to the council that we're following Measure E. So with that, that's kind of a general overview of where we are today. I think we'll let some of our technical experts and Supervisor Modi, if they have anything to say, and then we'll open up for questions. Any questions before I hand the microphone over? Yep.
What happens if D passes and E doesn't?
If D passes and E doesn't, well, then we'd have a revenue stream coming in, and that would then turn to the city council debating. It would open a new debate for the city council to decide if we wanted to continue to follow Measure E, even though it wasn't passed, or if we would debate that, as a body. So my hope is Measure D obviously passes and Measure E passes. I think Measure E is the vehicle we'll have to make sure it's directing our decision making and how we allocate that money. In this business, it's got to be black or white. You leave any gray area, and that's where you get into trouble. Good question. Dale.
Is there any fail-safe, and this is a 10-year tax, 2-3 years down the road, you're not on the council anymore, that the council just says, we don't want this advisory committee anymore, bye?
Yeah, certainly. It's always a prerogative of the council that they could change, they always have the ability
They change the wording where their two are tied together?
I think the answer is yes, we could. Do I think that a majority of my peers would want to change what we've already debated and passed through? Probably not, but if you're asking my opinion, there's not a rope-a-dope going on here. I would be shocked if this council and then future councils would want to pull the citizen committee back. That's really got a very specific, they only meet once a year. I would be very, very surprised in that situation.
On Measure E, you said it has to pass 50%, correct?
Measure D and Measure E would need to pass 50% plus one.
On Measure E, you said something about four categories: sheriff, police.
So social.
So as the voters are voting and they go social service, does it go like that? Or no?
It doesn't, no. So Measure E is, it's not like going through a drive-through and you get to pick which things you want off the menu. It puts a lot of onus.
As the money's going to be allocated.
Yeah, so, and we'll go through a little bit more of that today with our technical experts. I'll talk about how the money is going to be allocated. And if after this meeting, if you want to give me your email, I'll forward you actually how all the revenue allocations are going to be for each of the four categories. Get down to how it will be recommended for hirings in each of the four categories. Okay.
So is that already public record?
It is public record, but I can probably help you find it a lot quicker than you trying to.
It's in the staff report, but I did this on one PowerPoint slide that's a little easier to follow.
And it's on the Chamber of Commerce, one of the web pages somewhere. I did it for you. Yes.
You said the citizens group is only going to meet once a year?
The language was minimum once a year. If the citizen committee decides they want to meet more than once a year, that will be their purview. However, the independent audit will only take place once a year, so they might not have access to new information, but that will be for the citizen to decide. Okay, so why don't we just go, yes?
Let me just explain about
Got that mic.
advisory to the council. It's not making decisions. So maybe they're thinking that they're going to make decisions.
The citizen committee.
Yes.
The citizen committee. Yes. So, and that's a good clarification. So a citizen committee is going to be there for the oversight and to just verify that how money was allocated out of that special account when, they're going to give their opinion back to the city council whether or not we've adhered to that and followed it. Ultimately, the decision-making, the responsibilities, and the ability to make those decisions will be the city council. Okay, so with that, why don't we just go down the line? I'll hand it over to Chief Bloody.
So I'll give you your funding stream in an overall breakdown, and I'll let the sheriff and Leonard Modi talk about the county side of it. And I'll talk, since Chief Gray's not here, I'll talk about fire a little bit. What is being proposed, and I'm a little different than these guys. I'm an appointed official and not an elected official, so I'm not going to talk to you about a tax. I'm going to talk to you about the implementation action plan that I was part of developing. Whether or not you vote for the funding stream and how it gets funded, that's up to you. So they can advocate for a tax, I don't. But I think that we have a very solid plan from the action team. And the way that that breaks down is we base it off of $11 million worth of funding, which is what would be generated with the house and sale tax, quite frankly. $5 million of that comes to the Reading Police Department, and I'll go down in specifics as to how that money would be spent in my department. $2 million of it would go to the Reading Fire Department. $3 million would go to the sheriff for additional bed space specifically. $1 million will go to county mental health to close a funding gap to create a crisis stabilization unit for those that are experiencing the condition of what's called in criminal justice 5150, a danger to themselves, danger to others, unable to care for themselves due to their severe mental illness. And then there's $375,000 of one-time funds to be added to the $375 already allocated by council over the sale of the police facility, the old police facility. I'm not getting rid of my new one yet. Which would be a total of $750,000 to fund a nonprofit seed money to create a sobering center, so that we have an alternative place to take those that have no other crime than their level of addiction on the street, that are compliant, so that they can get fed, get clothed, get cleaned up a little bit. But instead of what's happening now, they go to jail, they get sober, and Tom sends them out. They actually would be engaged with drug treatment programs upon exit, and have the option, and we have been talking a lot with Donnell Ewert, the Director of Health and Human Services, on a funding stream on the backside of that sobering center, so that if they say, okay, I'm done, I want to go to treatment today, they can put them in a van, take them directly over to someplace for drug treatment and be engaged that day. That funding stream on the backside is what's going to be very important. But Donnell also said that he thinks he may be able to get grant funding that would double that. Would take it to about $1.5 million, and would actually probably fund a 10-bed sobering center for about 5 years. So that will be a huge asset. We arrest, just my agency arrests almost 1,000 people a year for public intoxication on alcohol alone, not drugs. So that's a lot of people that their only offense is their addiction. They could probably be better served in a sobering center with that linkage to drug treatment programs than just going to jail over and over and over again. And if we can maybe help, say that 1,000 arrests equates to 200 people. What if we help 10% a year? If we can help 10% a year to be clean and sober and get back to a normal, healthy life, I think that's a hell of an investment for this community. So on the police department side, right now we are at 98 sworn positions with 4 temporary positions funded through the reserve that council gave us that will end in July of 2017. That neighborhood police unit that you guys hear those stats about that are out doing so much good work, those are those 4 temporary funded positions. So with this plan, it would take us to 118 sworn. So we're actually going to add 20 police officer positions to the Reading Police Department. 4 of those would be the retention of those officers that are in that neighborhood police unit, which is a very valuable asset for this community because they are not tied to calls for service. They can go do those big projects like the Reading Inn and some of the other things that they've been doing. They've served probably 15, 20 search warrants now for street-level drug dealers that then get referred to CENTIF for follow-up so we can get those bigger fish up that chain. So we need to keep that unit. It has been very, very valuable. We're going to add 1 officer to each shift in patrol to take our minimum staffing from 7 to 8, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when I get to the CSOs, you'll see that it's actually a total of 16 that will be going to patrol. We're also going to invest 7 officers into investigations. Right now, I have 2 sex crimes investigators. Each one of them has a caseload of over 40 cases. We actually have sex crimes investigations that are legitimate, where the victim has been separated from the suspect and they are now safe, that have been waiting for an investigator to get to them for 6 months. That's ridiculous. We're adding 2 people to the sex crimes unit. We are going to add 2 detectives to our, we call it our night squad, or it's our gang detail. And that is going to become a gang vice detail. We just did our 2nd sex trafficking case the other day. It is happening in our community. We are actively working with the Federal Bureau of Investigations and the Department of Homeland Security to train some of our officers to do vice operations. We've got cooperation from an allied agency that is working and has an anti-trafficking task force. We are going to send our officers down there to work with them to gain the experience, because vice operations are very different from drug operations. We do a lot of dope, we don't do a lot of vice. So that will take that unit from 2 to 4. I have one primary property crime investigator that does all the property crime investigations for the city of Reading. One. And he's solved over almost 50 cases this year. Think of what it would be if I had more. Now this is where I differed a little bit from the consultant, is he said you don't put people into property crime investigations because the solve rate is low. Well, I'm not ready to claim surrender. So we're going to add 3 to property crimes. So that's 7 people going to investigations to help with what they're doing there. We're also going to add 2 more motors, traffic officers. More people die in this community every year from traffic accidents than anything else. And my motors really don't do traffic enforcement. They take traffic accidents. So with the CSOs added back to patrol, and I'll cover that in a minute, putting 2 more guys out on motorcycles, traffic enforcement changes traffic behavior, changes driving behavior. And if you drive around this town, you'll find out that people are speeding too fast, and we have a huge problem with driving under the influence. And we're going to change that by adding people to traffic. The other officer would be as a homeless outreach officer. We had a great partnership with Health and Human Services, Mental Health, and the Good News Rescue Mission doing homeless outreach. We went out twice a week and engaged the homeless population in the transient camps and tried to connect them with services. There was actually people that they got housing for that day when they accepted it. That program ended because I didn't have the officer dedicated to it. So the blueprint called for a sergeant to do that. I don't need a sergeant. I think an officer will do just fine. I think Teddy Snyder did a great job. I think Alicia will tell you she worked with him. You know, I think that the coordination with the Homeless Continuum of Care Council, with HHSA, with the Good News Rescue Mission, Mike Thomas has been doing it for a while and cleaning up camps and other things. I think an officer will be just fine. And that's the second area where I differ a little bit from the consultant in the fact that if you look, he didn't say no additional people to the Reading Police Department. What he said was he needs 7 sergeants and 6 officers. Well, I don't need any more sergeants. I need cops out doing their job. So our sergeants are valuable supervisors. They're great additions to the police department, but right now the need is not in supervision, it's in officers. So we're going to add 20 officers as a result of this plan. The second part of that is CSOs, community service officers. So employees of the police department that don't necessarily cost as much, they don't require as much training, and they don't carry a firearm. So we're going to put 10 of those in patrol. So all these cold reports that your police officers are tied up with now, cold burglaries, stolen vehicle recoveries, things that can get an investigation but don't need the officer there to face the suspect, all of those can be handled by a community service officer. We're going to put 10 of those into patrol. You put 10 of those into patrol and take those reports off of the officers, what does that create for the officers? Proactive time. And the NPU shows you what cops with free time do. They go arrest bad guys. They go solve problems. So by adding 1 officer per shift, plus the 10 officers to 10 CSOs, we're actually going to add 16 people to patrol. Of the 13 CSOs that we're going to add, 1 is going to do neighborhood watch. Right now, my CSO that coordinates all the neighborhood watch programs does it part-time, because the rest of the time she is the court liaison that puts together all the cases to get them to the DA's office so they can be prosecuted. And thank God for Terry that she spends so many hours at the police department. Terry Moravik is our volunteer neighborhood watch coordinator. Raise your hand, Terry. So she does a bulk of the work now, but what I want that person to do is neighborhood watch and also public outreach and public information. Pushing crime information out on social media is huge. It's a great way to communicate with our community. Right now we're just using Facebook and we're putting a limited amount of information out, but there's Facebook, there's Nextdoor, there's Instagram, Twitter. I mean, we can leverage the social media because everybody uses something different. You know, everybody was on MySpace, and then everybody went to Facebook, and now my kids are on, you know, Snapchat and Instagram. We can leverage all that social media to get valuable information out to the community faster if we have somebody that's focused on doing that. The other CSO, we are going to actually code enforcement train a CSO to embed with the neighborhood police unit. So they can work part-time with the homeless guy on transient camps if they need the code enforcement work, but really by putting a code enforcement trained person into the neighborhood police unit, when we go into problem locations, drug houses, other things, we can look at it from a code enforcement perspective as well as a criminal justice law enforcement perspective, and that expands what that team can do from a total problem solving arena, and that will be embedded in the police department. Because if you look at what code enforcement is doing now, one of their 2 people, half the year is dealing with transient camps, half the year is dealing with marijuana grows. Well, that's really more law enforcement related than building code related. So we want to bring a little bit of code enforcement over to the police department. The last CSO will manage body camera data. So when we go put on body cameras, remember that the average police department in California is reporting 2 hours of video per day per officer. That's 42 hours of video at our current staffing level. That's a lot of video and a lot of data that we have to manage. We file 2,300 new cases on average with the DA's office a year. That's 2,300 videos minimum that have to be pulled, packaged, attached to the case, and sent to the district attorney's office. So that person will manage all of that data under the auspices of my professional standards or my internal affairs sergeant. So that is the other 2 things that we're going to do with the Reading Police Department with that money is as we add officers, we add more records work to support those officers. So we're going to add 2 police records technicians. Right now, we're about anywhere from 150 to 200 reports behind at any one time that need to get typed, processed, and put through records. And if we add 6 more officers, so we need to get our record staff back to be able to manage the workflow on the backside of it. And the other thing is I want to take my crime analyst, who is a part-time person, and turn them back to full-time. So part-time gets no benefits or anything else. It's about $50,000 of that money. But we, just this year alone, based on legislation from the state of California, Mike has 6 new reports each month that he has to send to the Department of Justice. And that doesn't count when you start engaging more neighborhood watch programs and they want crime stats for their communities and all the other stuff that goes with it. It all falls on a guy that works 4 hours a day. So we want to take that position back to full-time so that as we bring our new computer system online and we can gain better criminal analysis data, we can actually leverage that in our community policing programs and get good data out of our system to help our investigators and others with their investigations. I used to be able to walk into a crime information center where I came from and said, hey, I got a burglary problem in North Stockton. Give me a list of modus operandi and possible suspects. And in 5 minutes, I had time of day, day of week, modus operandi, the recent parolees that have a burglary history that are in that area. I mean, I had everything in 5 minutes, and we can't get that out of our system. Well, we're going to gain that capability in 2017 with our new system, but we need the guy to be able to punch the numbers and get that stuff out more efficiently. For the Reading Fire Department side, the Reading Fire Department has 9 firefighter positions that are on temporary funding from the reserve because the grant ran out. So those will go away if the reserve money or the budget doesn't grow. But this plan also adds 9 firefighters on top of that and gets our fire department back to 3 firemen per engine. So if you look at Cal OSHA standard, with 1 guy on a hose and 1 guy running the engine and the water flow, if they show up at your house and it's on fire, they can't make entry into that fire. They spray from the outside until a second engine shows up. It's kind of ridiculous. So you cannot, from our perspective, public safety is a partnership between myself and the fire department. We create a sense of security in a community that attracts business to that community. Well, if I'm a manufacturer and I'm looking to come to Reading and the fire department can't make entry into my factory if it's on fire until 2 trucks get there, that's kind of ridiculous. So this plan takes us back to 3 firefighters per engine.
And can I clarify, the 9 positions that are on grant that we would like to continue funding, those are apprentice firefighter positions. And then with the 9 additional positions we want to fill, 6 would be apprentice, 3 would be grant uniformed firefighters. And again, I'm going to keep going back to this 2-day trip on McLeod. I still feel like I'm there right now. But I was with a firefighter out of Oakland, and they have 4 people per engine. And when I told him we were at 2, his eyes, his jaw dropped. Medford is at 4 firefighters per engine. National average is 3. Anyways.
The other thing that gets added to the fire department with the plan is 1 more fire inspector, which Chief Gray would have to be here to tell you exactly what they do and the importance of that. But he felt really, really strongly about getting that 1 firefighter, 1 fire inspector back. So from the city of Reading side, that is what the plan addresses. And I think that this plan is very unique in the fact that it is a comprehensive plan that shares with the county. It's not just city, even though it's our tax. So the primary user of the jail is proudly the Reading Police Department. We're about 80% of his business. And quite frankly, I want to make that higher. If you want to commit crime and victimize my community, you're going to have a relationship with my police department that finds you in bracelets and delivers you to Tom on a consistent basis. We have some very good rehabilitation programs and successful rehabilitation programs through Shasta County Probation. They're doing a very good job with some of the worst offenders in Shasta County with the Day Reporting Center and some of the other programs. The biggest problem that we have is that our failure to appear rate in felony arraignment court is, according to the court administrator, 75 to 80%. So we keep arresting them, they never show up to court, and we need to create some capacity, because if we can't get them to the rehabilitation programs, they don't do any good. As a system, a criminal justice system, we have a responsibility to give people the opportunity to change. But if they don't want to take that opportunity, there's got to be some consequence, and that's what Tom's going to talk about next.
Thanks, Chief. I'm going to give you a little bit of tour down history lane also. Councilman Weaver did a good job about AB 109 and Prop 47. But there's also going to be a new initiative that's going to be on the ballot by Governor Brown coming up in November that would release even more from prison. And that's getting into your second strikers. Some are going to have violence there. And then, of course, none of that is any good. So watch for that coming up in November. But the jail opened in 1984. At that time, it had about 282 beds. And then through a couple of remodels and double bunking, it went up over 400 beds. I think it was pushing 5. I think it was around 480 beds. But then we were still crowded in there. And there was the Board of Corrections, now it's known as the Board of State Community Corrections. The Board of Corrections came in at that time, reevaluated and said, hey, there's not enough space in your cells and floor space. Ended up getting a rating of 381. That's the current rating that we have right now. So remember some of these numbers. Then in 1993, just 9 years later, the jail was crowded and we were looking at a lawsuit. We ended up in a court agreement setting the capacity of the jail at 90%. 90% of 381 is 343. Excuse me. So then the first capacity releases started in 1993, and I think we had less than 100 or right about there. Fast forward to today, we now are at 3,000, a little bit more than 3,000. There's been also in recent past close to 4,000 capacity releases. These are all people that should have stayed in jail and either gone to court and either released on their own recognizance or stayed in jail and until they could go to court, or bailed out per the court system. So then they come back out, commit more crime, get arrested again, and come back in. That's the problem that we're seeing. Also in the 90s, we saw an economic downturn there as well. We ended up closing, the previous sheriff had to close Crystal Creek, which was a men's firefighting camp in coordination with what is known now as CAL FIRE, was California Division of Forestry back then. And we had to close our detention annex as well. That was a loss of 159 beds. So you look at today, Butte County has 614 beds, El Dorado 469, Imperial 612, Kings 487, Madera 563, and Yolo 452. Those are all counties that have populations close to Shasta County, and they all have a lot more beds. And I know that Imperial, Kings, and Yolo are also trying to build even more beds with state monies as well, because they're full. Most of the beds are full in California. About 38 of the counties out of 58 have capacity issues. So we're at 343 beds, at 90%. Every day, our capacity is between 85 and 90%. That 85% leaves about 5 to 7 beds available for the entire jail. The chief, as he said, Reading Police Department does a great job of arresting people and bringing them in, but also the other law enforcement agencies and the courts contribute to that as well, returning people from court that need to stay. So then we receive anywhere from 20 to 60 bookings per day. And so then if there's only 5 beds available, you can see that bed deficit.
We average 23 a day.
Yeah, and that's just an average.
That's just RPD.
And then you add to it CHP, Sheriff's Office, other law enforcement agencies, and the court. And you can see why we're completely full. The jail is mainly comprised of felons. Misdemeanants often don't stay unless there's some other reasons to keep them, and we try and keep them, or if they put on a booking sheet, they being the arresting officer, why this person needs to stay, then we really work on that. But that problem is, if that person stays, somebody else has to get out, and that becomes, again, another problem. We've gotten some money. We've applied for some money to get another jail, 232-bed jail. That was back in 2007. We were awarded the money. That was about $30 million. The county board of supervisors, they turned it down. And the reason because of that, you have to contribute about $5 million in matching funds. But the problem is, even once you build the jail, you have to operate it. At that time, it was estimated to be about $6 to $8 million a year to operate that jail. That would have been an additional $6 to $8 million of the county budget. The county looked at it and said, we don't think we're going to have the operating costs. If they had built that jail then, it would be opening about probably about a year ago. And definitely the county coffers for revenues don't have that additional $6 to $8 million there. We just got through with our budget process, and that was a very tight budget. We had to have basically a status quo budget now, and that $6 to $8 million additional dollars would not have been there, and that would have been a major impact on the county as well. So we applied for another building opportunity. It was Senate Bill 1022. That's what gave it that, and it had to have a rehabilitative process to it. So it's going to have some services and programs in there, and some essentially classrooms for those services and programs. That's going to include drug and alcohol, anger management, parenting skills, and it goes on, and try and get some vocations, because there's going to be a kitchen and our laundry services are going to be down there. But we still, that's only 64 beds. We need more. And so out of this, we planned to look at this blueprint. We said, hey, we're going to be moving out the kitchen and the laundry out of the current jail. That's roughly about 6,000 square feet down there. We can remodel that and turn that into additional jail bed space. The courts, we're going to be getting a new Shasta County courthouse. The existing one will eventually end up getting remodeled for some county offices, and it'll be built on Court Street. But then departments 1 and 2 are connected to the jail, and those have approximately 6,000 feet each in addition to the lobby. So then you can get 64 beds out of each one of those. So there you have 64 in the basement, 64 in Department 1. That's 128 there. And then this $3 million that we'd be getting through the sales tax, or transaction use tax, for the technical name, would help fund those additional 128 beds at the Justice Center and the one in the basement of the jail. There would be another courtroom there. If the county needed more beds to expand, we could do that. That'd be with county money. Or it could also have programming space, which is very much needed as well, to start the programming when they're in custody at the jail, and then it can be a continuum as they go to the 64-bed facility. It's known as the Adult Rehabilitation Center on Breslauer, the ARC. And then if they go to work release, which is minimum security, and or when they get done with their sentence, then they go to the supervision of probation for continuing these. So then you have a seamless continuum of rehabilitative services and programs that the inmates and or those under supervision from probation are receiving. The property values, if we talk about our revenues not coming in, property values now, 2016, are just now reaching the 2006 levels. So there, we're not receiving our revenues that we see. Also the sales tax, our sales tax revenues are also about, and now, 2016, are now just about at 2006 levels. So we're not fully in full economic recovery. We're usually a few years behind the San Francisco Bay Area and the Sacramento area. we're seeing some things look very encouraging, but also we're receiving information from the state, both from the governor and from the LAO's office, that we could be looking at another downturn and another recession coming up, and that gets us impacted as well at the county level. So that's why this sales tax is needed, the transaction use tax for Measure D&E, and it can definitely improve keeping those offenders in custody, having offender accountability, make our community safer, holding those in custody that need to go to court, and getting the justice delivered. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Remember, it's 64 beds for the ARC, 64 beds for the basement, 64 beds for Justice 1 and 2. So that's 192 jail beds total.
And a possibility of another 64 if we county funded the remaining Justice Center or use that for programming space there. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Sheriff, I have a question. Do you foresee, which I support the sales tax and the increase, obviously we need more jail bed space. As this is enacted, do you see opportunities where you could provide more prevention and restoration? We know that 50% of all felons that are released are back in prison within a year. We have programs like the DRC that really reduces recidivism. Do you see opportunities where you can move more people into programs like that so that people are actually restored back into the community?
A very, very good question and comment, and yes, I do. We are partnering with probation right now on a lot of our programs. We also have one that's called the Step Up program. So inmates that are doing time for work release, instead of doing some of their time community service work, we've partnered with probation, and we've also partnered with Good News Rescue Mission to where they can work on getting their GED while they're on the outside, and then when they're ready and they show the academic improvement, we have a program out at Shasta College, and we started out small, just with 3 areas of office management, office administration, heavy equipment, and welding. And now we're expanding it out to the rest of the college, and that's worked out very good, where some of these people have gotten certificates for vocational training so they can be job ready and have the skills, not only just in vocational skills, but reading and writing as well. How can you be successful if you can't read and write? And so we'd like to see that expanded out as well. And so that's where we'd be working on that seamless continuum of services, programs, and education to help the rehabilitative process.
Yes, Julie, the current day reporting center also is contracted at 120 individuals, and at any one time there's only about 80 there. So by getting jail space, you can actually get them through the court process, because if they're not sentenced, they don't go there. So no matter how successful that is, we actually have enough budget in the CCP budget to expand that to about over 200. But if you can't get them through court, you can't get them there. And I think the jail bed space adds our ability to get people to those programs rather than having to swim around at 80% failure to appear rate.
Sheriff, I have a question for you. Did you mention how many early releases we had in 2015?
I did.
Okay, what was that number again?
Over 3,000.
Over 3,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And it averages, it's over the last few years, it's generally averaged just over 3,000, sometimes up to 3,500, some down 3,200, but that's kind of a flat level of those releases. But again, those are people that came into jail and should have stayed there, but we strictly don't have the room for it. And that's why these beds are so desperately needed. Okay, I'd like to turn it over at this time to Supervisor Leonard Bodie.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm Leonard Bodie. I'm the supervisor for District 2 for Shasta County, and was also a member of the Blueprint team. And I'm the retired police chief for Reading. And Julie, just one part of her question about rehabilitation, when they want to add to that is the sheriff mentioned the ARC. The ARC is the Adult Rehabilitation Center. And part of the whole process and why we're able to get the grant for this is it's not just more jail space. You actually have to have built-in programming space, and the sheriff could elaborate if we needed to, but it's set up to provide those kind of retraining for individuals, hopefully on the front end after they're made their first offense, rather than they go to prison and then they learn all the other skills they need to be good criminals. So we're hoping to catch them on the front end and reduce that. So that is part of that new building that we're going to have.
And they don't have to be in the ARC.
That's correct. Yeah. as part of the programming and to get the services, you don't have to be in custody. You could be someone who's been sentenced and maybe you're out doing the work release program or something like that, or some other home confinement, but you actually can still come down and get into the services that are being offered there at the facility. You don't have to be in custody to take advantage of that.
You can do both in custody and out of custody.
Yeah, both in custody and out of custody can be part of these programs. So I think the sheriff touched on, he absolutely knows and believes that you have to do something different than what we've done in the past. That's why the state has passed their problem to us. They weren't doing that very well, and eventually they just got to the point where they were warehousing prisoners, to the point where, as it was alluded to, they were overcrowded. In came the federal courts and said, either you release them or we're going to fine you millions and millions of dollars. So that the governor found an easy solution. He gave us the prisoners and gave us about 75% of the money. So we got more people and he got a better budget. I want to touch on one thing just for the police chief. He made a comment earlier, and I want to make sure it wasn't misunderstood. He said, as he pointed to the electives, he says, the electives can support a sales tax. He says, I don't. I think what he means is he can't. Yeah. As appointed police chiefs, it's very common throughout the state, you just don't get involved on the political side of things. You just run your business and do the best you can. I think his energy that he has for the results of what would come from this tells you what he'd like to have happen, but he can't advocate that. He leaves that to his bosses and to the sheriff and I and others. The other thing I want to mention, someone was very concerned about Measure E, and what if D and E, and what if E didn't pass, or someone else said, what if a future council gets rid of the advisory committee? And they could do that. But I would tell you, as an elected, if I know that this tax was passed for a specific purpose, which is spelled out exactly by the numbers, how much money to where and when, if any elected official did that, it's political suicide. It's crazy. I mean, you should get recalled or voted out in the next term on it, because obviously what the people would want if they voted for this sales tax. So I have all the confidence in the world, whether it be this council or future councils, are going to recognize what this was committed for and would not step over that line. That would be very foolish on their part. I want to just add a couple more things that the chief talked about. He talked about CSOs being added to the department. We used to have a lot of those, and he's absolutely right. If you have CSOs taking those non-emergency calls, it frees up your police officers to be available for when you call 911, they show up. But also, when they're not doing that they're driving around looking for people who are doing bad things. And that's how they catch people. It's that proactive time that you're able to stop cars and find people who either have been committing crimes or perhaps you prevent them from committing crimes because they're aware that you're out there. And one other comparison, he mentioned he has one property crime investigator. When I was the chief, I had four for one now. And just think about this. One burglar is doing 20 burglaries a month, and that's pretty common. You arrest 3 or 4 of those and get them off the street. Think how many burglaries you've just prevented in 1 month. That's what he's trying to accomplish. That's why he's not giving up on not arresting people who are committing burglaries, property crimes. Those are the ones that are causing most of the grief that we're suffering right now. I do want to mention, the sheriff kind of talked a bit about our past practice with the previous jail and where we were. Our county is fiscally conservative. We're one of the few counties that got through the recession without having major cutbacks to programs, major layoffs, and cutting all of our services. We just don't spend money we don't have. We try to make sure that as we move forward, that there's money there to cover what we have, and not just like you wouldn't go out and you have a house that you can buy and pay for a $500,000 house or $200,000. You don't go buy a $2 million house because you can't make the payment, and that's where the county is. The other thing, a lot of people think that the county has a lot of money because they see our budget. Our budget is $400 million something. But most of our budget, about 80 to 85%, is state-mandated programs. They're programs that the state has that we administer for him here locally, as all the other counties do. And and they give us the money, we have to spend it for what they tell us to spend it on. That's your social services program, that's your public health programs, it's your mental health programs. So our discretionary money is pretty limited. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 to $75 million. We allocate the majority of our money to public safety, to the sheriff's department, to the fire department, probation, the DA's office, and yes, we have to pay for the public defender as well. So we don't have a lot of discretionary money. But public safety has and continues to be our #1 priority. It's where we put our dollars. And just to go over a couple of things that's in the plan, the chief talked very well about the sobering center. The other part of it is the mental health crisis stabilization unit. That's the part where $1 million from the plan would come to this, and the county is committing the other $1 million, for a total of $2 million a year to run this center. This is for those who need to be placed into a secure facility, at least until they're stabilized, and then can be sent on to other services. The reason this is important, and I can tell you from my own experience, mentally ill people who are out there without services eventually end up on the street without the care that they need. Sooner or later, they're going to commit crimes, and they're in the criminal justice system. That's not a good place for them. It doesn't really help them. It overfills Tom's jails, and they don't get the services they need. And so it's just a vicious cycle for them. Mentally ill people, for the most ones that we're dealing with on the street, should not be in jail. They need to be in mental health services. And that's why this is going to be very important. This is going to take people off the street who are out there taking up the police officers' times, when in fact they should be getting services, come and get back on their medication, getting into the programs that could help them. On a side note, the county is already committed and is spending our own dollars, not money out of this plan, for a mental health resource center. This is a voluntary place where people can be taken or they can go to if they need help, they just don't know where to turn. So it's a place where officers, if someone's voluntary, would willing to go there, the officers can drop them off. If you have a family member that has issues, you can take them there and you'll get directions to which services are available, where they are, how to contact them, and get those people the help they need. That's something we're going to move forward even on today. And the last thing I just want to reiterate again, the jail bed space, which I believe is critical, the ARC, the Adult Rehabilitation Center that's moving forward, that is moving forward as we speak today through the county. It doesn't rely on this sales tax for that. We're committed to doing that. But what I think is important is, as I mentioned, there's extra jail space that will be available in the future that we need today. The good part about it, it comes in sections. So let's say we build the 64 beds in the jail, in the basement, jail basement, and 64 beds in the one courtroom. And because of some of our good work or other things that change around, the economy gets better, we have less crime, and we don't need that last 64 beds that we don't have the money for yet today. We're not committed to it. It gives us some flexibility. So we can change those plans to do something different. Maybe it needs to be converted to more programming space for those who are in custody. So I think this plan gives us some flexibility in how we move forward and spend the hard dollars that we might get through this sales tax. Any questions? Yes.
Just kind of wanted to commend all of you guys on the panel. Something I don't think you guys mentioned was the blueprint for safety. If that would have actually been implemented as the blueprint, it was what, 22 million? You guys cut this down to 11 million. And I just want to commend you guys on all your hard work there.
No, thank you. And what he's saying is the blueprint that came out, it showed, over the 5 tiers, $22 million of expenses. As the chief mentioned, actually Brent mentioned more specifically, we looked at this and we said, that's great. We don't have $22 million. Let's look at what makes sense, what we think is more crucial to our community. There were parts of that blueprint plan that the consultant gave us that were boilerplate. It just sort of fit a lot of communities, but didn't fit ours. And that's why we argued kind of to make changes to it that were more specific to our area. And then we did pull it back and ask, okay, what can we afford with a half-cent sales tax? What's the possibility? And look at those issues and try to figure out what we could get to cover most of the areas. We could hire 40 police officers, but there's no jail space, then it doesn't do you a whole lot of good. We could put more people in jail, but they have mental health issues, it doesn't do them any good. So that's why we tried to pick those 3 or 4 areas. The fire department, as was mentioned, and they got some critical needs as well. We tried to pick 4 areas that we thought were really critical to the overall health of the community and find the best solutions for that.
And Leonard, you might touch on, quick 11 million, because a 22 million would have been a 1-cent sales tax, and that would have never passed.
Well, the point is, we looked at quarter-cent, half-cent, three-quarter-cent, 1-cent sales tax. We tried to be realistic what our community might accept, and that's where we came to the half-cent as a possibility, and then tried to gear our needs to that budget to see what we can do best with that money. Other questions? Thank you.
I have one closing comment. So if this passes in November, what does that mean for an average family as far as additional costs? So we actually sat in as part of our implementation team meetings, and there were some studies that the county had done that an average family of 4, so with 2 kids, based on average spending habits, it would cost them approximately $50 a year additional costs. And that's for you to decide if you want to spend that investment here, or because you are paying for it in one way or the other. You're paying for it maybe a lost quality of living, or insurance rates, alarms. We're paying for it in some form or another. I sat down with my family and my budget, and I looked at what our average cost would be, and it would cost us roughly $55, for my family based on our spending habits. Once you take out your mortgage and those things that don't have tax associated to your local. So again, I think that's going to be for each of you to look at and decide what fits for you. I'll tell you, I'm very optimistic. I think there's some coalescing right now as people are becoming more educated on what Measure D is about, what Measure E will advise us, and the checks and balances we put in place to make sure that the money is spent as is laid out in Measure E. We live in a great community. We have good technical experts in our chiefs and our sheriff, and our electeds and our staff who've come together. But I also want to thank Ed Wallman and your group that provides a venue like this for us to get together and have these, I guess what I'd call more intimate conversation for us to ask questions. And what's as important as you who are here today or who are watching online, again, I hope you'll get out and talk to your neighbors, your friends, educate people, and then vote according to your conscience. Alexis.
I'm for both measures. However, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what's the shadow side? Why wouldn't people be for this? I mean, everything seems wonderful. So where are the considerations that the public would generally have?
Yeah, I think predominantly, again, the questions I keep getting back to come back to trust, which is this concern that we're going to ask for this additional revenue, and then we're going to take it and we're going to go spend it over here on raises, or we're going to go spend it over here on a pet project. Again, I would echo what Supervisor Modi said. I mean, that would just really be career suicide for any elected leader to, think so foolishly. I can't envision it happening with, I guess, the people I know today on the council and the people running for council. And I think, again, we put some checks and balances in place where we'll know. I mean, we're going to know. This isn't a federal or a state level budget. We will know where the money's being spent here at this level. Jake, did you have a question?
There's a source that people can go to on the City of Reading website to find some frequently asked questions and answers, right? Just wanted to... Yeah. You mentioned that earlier, too, I think.
Yeah. I don't know actually where on the City of Reading website.
It's under the election information under the city clerks, and we'll put it out, and I'm sure it's available other places, too.
So on the City of Reading's website, we heard here from our president of our Chamber of Commerce, educating an elected leader where our information is. Appreciate that. And also on the Chamber of Commerce site, And I also, before this meeting, I sent this frequently asked questions to Matt Morgan and to Ed, because I want to see if maybe you guys would send it out to all the Versus Crime Watch members. Okay. Yes?
Is this gonna be a sales tax that's gonna have like 10 years?
A sunset, yeah. So this has a 10-year sunset, and it has language written in there that the council cannot deliberate and try to extend it. So at the end of 10 years, it either goes away, or it would be put forward to the citizens to decide if they want to continue. But it puts the power back to the voters in 10 years. The council will not have the ability to do more. So.
Yeah, the only concern I had is you're estimating a certain amount of money that's going to come in from this particular tax, or I don't know what to call it.
Transaction and use tax.
Transaction use fee. Based on a couple of comments I heard, there might be the possibility of a recession. Has that been played into what the low end of that income amount?
No, and I'll tell you why. We actually ran our revenue projections. We had a debate as a team whether or not we wanted to put cost of living increases in there, and it's one of those things is how detailed, how into the weeds do we need to get here? And so what we, at least the decisions we made as Kirk Starman, city manager, kind of made was we thought we got enough meat on the bones to have a discussion with the community, and then these are things that should it pass, we'll have to, again, we as a city and a county, we're always running 2-year projections, 5-year projections, and we'll have to, we will have to factor in there if we have, we might make more some years, might make a little bit less, but.
I think the other part of the equation that you're concerned about, though, is if there's not enough money there, then that means probably might be 1 or 2 less policemen or firemen, might be some less services on the county side. We'll just have to cut back on what's available to us. But I think both the city and the county are committed that we're not going to overspend money we don't have. So, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's not like it's just one project, one thing, and therefore you're tied to it no matter what. Again, the chief might have to make some adjustments for the sheriff or the fire chief, and so I think that's what the flexibility will be.
Of course, if the economy gets stoked up, there could be more.
Well, he's thinking the positive, so what if it gets better?
Yeah.
Let's hope. Let's hope for all of you.
Well, and one thing I'll say too on the police department side. So when we do our annual budget, if you look at salaries, benefits, and everything, the average police officer costs about $155,000. When I did this plan, I budgeted them at $175,000, and I added $20,000 onto every community service officer, because as I add staff, I'm going to have to add vehicles, fuel, training costs, uniform costs, equipment costs. A police radio is $5,700 a piece. You add 13 CSOs and 6 officers, that's 18 radios we have to buy. So I tried to embed all of that in there, and as we do a 10-year plan, quite frankly, our hiring right now is we're not getting the laterals. So we're going to have to send some kids to the academy. And we've actually interviewed 40 people in the last 2 days that want to come in as trainees and go to the academy starting next year. So, those people are going to come in at more like the $132,000 range. So we'll have that kind of, flex in that to be able to buy, a police vehicle is $43,000. So, by the time you add that equipment, the training, the fuel, and everything else, I think we've got a pretty good plan and a little bit of, I hate to say buffer, but a little buffer to make sure we're on budget in there. The other thing I wanted to make a point too, the way that the plan is laid out, that wasn't mentioned, is that while the ARC is being built, there's still $3 million going to the sheriff. $200,000 of that is for additional contracted out-of-county bed space, so that we can get some teeth in the first couple of years. The rest of it goes into a capital fund savings account, so when those improvements need to be done to the jail, that money is sitting there waiting, and the county's not accruing debt to make those renovations to the jail. That money is generated from this, so it's not creating additional debt for the county. And then that money then transitions into the operational costs.
I think that's a good point. We have $500,000, $550,000, I believe now, through the Community Corrections Partnership for outside jail bed space, but you recognize that as it takes time to build the additional jail beds, there's still the need there, and so we put some money in there for additional outside the county jail bed space.
I have a question. This is going to be a bit of a stretch, especially for the chief of police. Are you ready? So
I think you just called me short because I
no, it's a stretch in the way that I'm not quite sure that there's a way to measure this, but my personal opinion is that we're really running at a deficit, like a severe deficit, and crime is pretty bad. Although we live in a really beautiful community and we're all after the greater good, I heard that the original plan was $22 million. And you guys have been valiant and believe that we can actually correct the problem or attempt to correct the problem with $11 million. I'm curious, and I think that this is going to be more of like an instinctive feel. Do you feel as though this is actually just going to get us to maintenance and be able to really address the current, like day-to-day ongoing problems, or are we going to be able to actually excavate and clean up?
Yes, I think we can.
Okay.
Because the original blueprint plan calls for a much more expensive addition of jail beds. We're actually getting double that for less money, so that's a huge advantage. On the police department side, he was adding a lot of supervisors, which cost significantly more to pay for a sergeant than an officer. I've reduced all of those positions down to officer and community service officer positions.
So more boots on the ground.
So we're putting more boots on the ground for less cost. And, I think that, his idea was that a sergeant could better coordinate with county social services because he's got rank. Well, I think we have enough respect for each other that an officer does just fine. Supervisors are there to supervise the officers, not necessarily to coordinate with other county, health and human services agencies. We have better relationships in that. So I think that we're actually getting what he's requesting for less money because I think we were a little more efficient about how we're allocating the money and getting the bed space and getting the officers and getting everything else.
So what I hear you saying is that you're very confident about this plan, given the budget.
I am. I think that I can actually, and what I'll say is that please come Wednesday night to the town hall meeting. Sequoia Middle School wasn't available, and I didn't want to pay a bunch of money for the Civic and have 200 people in 2,000 seats. So we're going to do it in the council chamber again, and I'll gauge the next location by how many people show up. But we're going to talk about the way ahead for the Reading Police Department, not just with the implementation team, because that's embedded into that, but we're going to talk about strategies and philosophies and other things for the Reading Police Department going into the future, and I think it'll answer a lot of those questions.
Thank you.
What time is the meeting next Wednesday?
6, council chambers.
Dave?
Question for Tom. Tom, what would step up or some of the fermentation of one of our rehabilitation programs? Do we have any type of numbers on how many vendors who go through some type of rehab program end up landing a job and being integrated?
What's the success rate?
Not quite yet. We're getting some of that now through the Day Reporting Center, Community Corrections Center. And we are working on the job part of it there. One time I polled some of the community business people, and I put in a program into our jail for food service handler, because we have a huge kitchen and we feed about probably close to 1,200 meals a day. And we have a huge commercial laundry. And I said, hey, if I put in a vocational program and teach them how to run the washing machine and run the dryers or food services, can that help when they get out? And they said, as long as they're drug-free, it would certainly help, and it might be the tiebreaker on a person getting a job having some experience versus no experience. But the key is that substance abuse and getting them drug and alcohol-free. We hope to have them employed, and that's why we also started and developed the Step Up program for vocational skills, getting it out of Shasta College. Now we've expanded it for other education as well, where they can either get a vocational certificate or a degree and maybe move on from there.
If you look at the county website, county probation does a report to the Board of Supervisors twice a year, I think, or at least once a year. And all of those statistics for the job program at the Community Correction Center are in there on how many have been employed. But also, as far as your question about success rate, the Day Reporting Center 69 graduates have a rearrest rate, a true recidivism rate, not this definition the state's using about reconviction, of 14.7%. That's a hell of a successful program. And that's why I say that shouldn't be 89 people in there. If it's that successful, let's get it to 250, but we got to get them through the court to get them there.
And I will say, to be realistic, it probably will go up a little bit, maybe up to maybe 20 or something. But the state's recidivism rate, about 70%. 70, not 70. That's how bad the state is. And that's why we have this problem we have. They've given it, they just put it back in our laps. So we're trying to do more stuff on the local side. And I think that's a great example. The other one is the addicted offender program that they go through with the judges. The reason why it works is that they don't toe the line, they go back to jail, and town makes space for them in the jail when that happens. But their recidivism rate is very, very, very low as well. So you have to, it's more on the local level where I think where the rubber meets the road, that we're doing a far better job.
Have you had an opportunity to visit with folks in Anderson? I've gotten a number of phone calls from citizens in Anderson that have seen positive results from what they've been able to do with additional revenue in terms of public safety in Anderson.
I'll tell you that Anderson had 3 things. 3 cops. They're in the same county that I'm in. They've got the same jail space issues to deal with, and they're the only place in the county where the crime went down. So it's hard to measure the effect of having an officer patrolling a neighborhood, but when people see a cop, they don't commit crime. Now, I can't tell you that, you give me 6 cops, crime's going to go down, 10%. But what I will say, relaying back to her question for a minute, is we have a property crime and drug addiction issue in Reading. We do, and it affects everybody, businesses, residences, everybody else. What we don't have is a huge violent crime issue where people are dying in the street every day, like they do in some of these other cities that you look at. So, from a quality of life perspective, I know that the transients make us feel uncomfortable sometimes, but they're not necessarily all criminals. Not every one of our transients is out committing crime. And I'll tell you, a large, vast majority of our criminals aren't homeless either. So, although we have some quality of life issues, some property crime issues, I still will put our community up against any other in California any day of the week.
And what made that work for Anderson was their transaction use tax, the sales tax that got them the revenue to get more police officers on board there, to be out in the community, being proactive and taking a change for the community there. And that's why this sales tax is so needed for Reading and Shasta County, so we can have more firefighters, police officers and community service officers, and jail bed space to hold the offenders accountable and make Reading and Shasta County a better place to live than we currently have right now.
And I just wanted one last thing, I think I'd like to get us all out. I wanted to just go back to what Brent said earlier, because he talked about how committed he is to this. And I want to add my support to this as well. I'm a native of Reading, born and raised here, lived here my entire life. When you talk about the quality of life, I remember